Good day everyone, welcome back to Chess Master Journey. Hope all of you are doing great out there. Today we're going to focus on King's Pawn opening, which is Rye Lopez. So we're going to look at the variations we have under Rye Lopez. So kids, let's look at the opening position of Rye Lopez. E4, E5, and F3, and C6, and Bishop B5. Okay, so this is already the Rye Lopez opening. So this is how the position looks like for Rye Lopez. Now let's look at the variations we have under this opening. So first we will take a look for the black. So we will take a look at the A pawn for black. Let's say A pawn we move to A6 square. And for the white, since the bishop is under attack, so that the white will move its bishop to A4 to protect it. So let's go to A4. So in this position, this is known as the Columbus variation. Okay, this is the Columbus variation. So let's move further. What else move we can do under this position? For the black, let's look at the knight. Knight move to F6 square. And for the white, we can go for the castling, king safety. And in this position, now this is known as the Rye Lopez Morphy defense. As you all can see here, this is the Morphy defense. Okay, I hope all of you are with me. So this is if we continue the game using the black pawn to A6. Let's see some other moves. So we'll start again with the E4 for Rye Lopez, E4, E5, and F3, and C6, BB5. Okay, now let's take a look at the black knight. Let's say now we use the black knight to move to F6 square. Okay, once in this position, this is known as the Rye Lopez Berlin defense. Okay, let's take a look for further moves. And for white, perhaps we can do castling. So king to G square and rook to F square. Okay, and then for the black, we can capture the white pawn as it's free. So the knight in F square can go and capture E4 pawn. The next move would be for the white, we can use the pawn to move to D4 square. Okay, and this is known as the still under the Berlin defense, but now it's known as the Rio Gambit accepted. I hope you all can see here, Rio Gambit accepted. Okay, let's look further more into the game. Now would be the black turn. So let's say the black, we use the E knight to move to D6 square. Once you move the knight to D6 square, now it becomes the hermit variation, still under the Berlin defense, but it becomes the hermit variation. If you look at the position here. Okay, so for the next move, white probably would use this bishop to capture the C6 knight. And hence you can just continue the game by using the D pawn or B pawn to capture the C6 bishop. Right, okay. So let's go take a look at the next move that we can do. Okay, for the next, we will take the black pawn to f5 square. So black pawn to f5 square. Okay, in this position, this is known as the Slimane defense. Okay, for the white turn, we will use the knight. Knight to c3 square. So under this position, it is still known as the Slimane defense, but now it becomes the Dikov variation. So for continue this game, we can use the f black pawn to capture the e4 pawn. And next, for the white turn, we can use the knight to capture the e4 pawn. And let's just continue the game furthermore. Let's say for the black turn, we use the knight to f6 square. Yeah. So once you move the knight to the f6 square, now this game becomes Slimane defense but Tartrakova variation. You all can see the name over there. So now you can see that this Lopez has variations of positions that can be made. Okay, so let's move on to the next position. Just now we look at the f5 square, right? Now we'll go for g pawn. Let's say we use the g pawn to move to g6 square. Okay, now this position is known as the fianchetto defense. Okay, to continue the game, for the white, you can use the c pawn to c3 square. Then for the black, we can use the a pawn to a6 square. So in this scenario, with the bishop probably can go behind, or you can move in front to capture the knight. So let's say in this position, we choose to use the bishop to move backward to a4 square. And for the black, we can use the d pawn to move to d6 square. So this is how you can continue your game in the fianchetto defense. Right. Okay, we'll move to the next. Now let's take a look at the bishop. Let's say we use this bishop to move to the c5 square. Okay, so bishop to c5 square. Yes, so this is known as the classical variation. It is known as the classical variation. So for the white, the next step would probably to do castling. And then the black knight can move to d4 square. And now you can use the white knight to capture the d4 knight. And black bishop capture the knight, bx d4. So this is how you can continue the game under this classical variation. Okay, now let's take a look at the knight. So let's take a look at the g knight. Let's say that we use the g knight to move to e7 square. Okay, once you move the knight to e7 square, this position is known as the Lopez Cosio defense. So for the white, again, as we already moved the minor pieces, now we can go for the king safety. So we'll do the castling. And for the black, we can use the g pawn to g6 square. And then we can move ahead. For the white, we can use the c pawn to c3 square. And for the black, we can use the bishop to g7 square. And for the white, we can develop the white pawn to d4 square. So this is how you can continue the game under the Cosio defense. Okay, then we will look at the next variation. Okay, next variation, we will take the knight again, but we will take the c knight, which is knight to d4 square. So knight to d4 square. And this position is known as the bird variation. So this is known as the bird variation. So for the white, you will use the knight to capture d4 and x d4. And then the pawn capture d4 square. So ex d4. And now we'll go for castling for the white. And let's continue the game further more. So this time for the black, we use the bishop to c5 square. And for the white, we can use the d pawn to d3 square. So this is how the position looks under the bird variation. If we use the knight to move. Okay, let's take a look at the next variation. So let's refresh back on the Lopez opening. So again, let's see. E4, E5, and F3, and C6, BB5. Now we will take a look at the D pawn. So the D pawn moved to D6 square. This is known as the stay knight's defense. Okay, let's see. Okay, stay knight's defense. So for the continuation, we can use the D pawn to D4 square and bishop to D7 square. And next we can use the B knight to C3 square. So in this position, we can use the black pawn, E pawn to capture the D4 pawn. And then we can, for the white can use the knight to capture the D4. So NX D4. So this is how you can continue your game under the position for Lopez if you move the D6 square. Okay. Okay, next we will look at the bishop. Let's say we use the bishop to move to B4 square. So bishop to B4 square. Okay, this opening, this position is known as the Lopez elephant defense. So for the white probably can move its pawn to attack the bishop or can go for castling. So let's say we use the pawn to move to C3 square. And for the black, it will choose the bishop to move to a5 square. And now the white can do castling. And for the black, perhaps we can use the knight to move to e7 square. So this is how you can use to play under the elephant defense position. Okay, let's take a look at the next variation. So let's now look at the queen. Let's say we use the queen to move to e7 square. Okay, in this position, this is known as the Lopez Vinogradov variation. Okay, under this position, the white either can move its minor piece, which is the knight, or you can use the king to do the castling. So let's say we do castling in this position. And the black can move its knight to d8 square. Then we can use the white to move to d4 square. Right. So this is how you can continue your game under the Vinogradov variation. Okay, now let's take a look at the next move for the queen. Let's say this time we use the queen to move to f6 square. So how you can continue your game under this position? So for this, maybe the white can do the castling first. And for black pieces, the bishop to c5 square. And for white, we can use the c pawn to c3 square. And for the black, we can use the g knight to e7 square. Then you can centralize the rook for the white. So bring the rook to e1 square. And for the black, we can use to attack the bishop. So we push the pawn forward. So we use the a pawn to a6 square. And to protect the bishop, the white can move its bishop back to a4 square. So this is how you can develop the pieces if you use the queen to move to f6 square earlier. Okay, now let's take a look at the bishop. So let's say in this situation we use the bishop to d6 square. And again for the white we can go for castling. And again in this position as usual we can push forward the pawn to a6 square. Then the white bishop to a4 square. And again we can use the pawn to attack the bishop. So we use the b pawn to b5. So in this position the bishop would go to b3 square. So this is how we can develop the pieces under this variation. Right. So today we learned on the Lopez. Quite a lot of variations we learned. So let's just take a look at the overview of variations that we learned. So first, this is for Lopez. So we go for the position, something like that, like this. Just take a look. And then we looked at the Berlin defense. So the two knights for the black are out. So this is how the position looks for the Berlin defense. And for classical defense, the bishops. So these are the positions for the classical defense. For closed defense, as you can see, this is how the closed variation look like. The bishop in E7 position and another bishop is here, and for the black it is in C1 and B3 position. Then we looked at the exchange variation. So this is what we call as the exchange variation position. This is Marshall attack under Lopez. And finally, this is Schulman defense for the Lopez, the position. So that's what the overview of the Lopez for today. So to all of you out there, you have no idea how far you can fly until you spread your wings. So what you all waiting for? Spread your wings starting from today. Till then, see you all in the next lesson. Bye.